Marker. And action.
This podcast is being recorded at the Motion Picture Institute, the oldest film school in Michigan, training the next generation of filmmakers today. Check out the website motionpicture.edu and schedule a tour now. All right, guys, and welcome back to the show. Today I have a very, very exciting guest, Michael B. Chait, a multiple Telly Award-winning director who found mainstream success with his first feature film, Wolf Hound, in 2022. It was acquired and distributed by Lionsgate and their Grindstone Entertainment Group. The film was given a limited theatrical release in the US and Canada, but found major success on video on demand. Following the success he provided as a proof of concept, Chait piqued the interest of Lionsgate executives and is now in discussions about his next feature film project. Very exciting. Chait began his career directing commercials for clients including Volkswagen, Honda, Falcon Motorsports, the U.S. Air Force, Air National Guard, Lingenfelter Performance Engineering, and music videos for artists including James Maslow of Big Time Rush, Apple the App of the Black Eyed Peas, and more. So, without further ado, let's talk motion picture. All right, Michael, I appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
No, absolutely. It's my pleasure, and I'm honored to have been asked to come here. So thank you very much.
I want to go straight into the meat of the bones. We watched your film, and I got the first thing I know is about the planes. How did you get the planes in the movie? Because they look magnificent.
Well, first of all, let me ask you, overall, thumbs up or thumbs down? Did you like it or hate it or somewhere in between?
I'm very easy when it comes to World War II films because I'm a history nut. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my God, this is gorgeous. Just all the air photography. I was like, this is insane that someone could even get that kind of quality at an independent level. And then I was like, the whole way you handled like the action throughout the film, I was very impressed at this level. I'm like, I didn't even know this was possible. So I had a great time watching the film.
I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. It's historical fiction, but it is based on a real event and based on real, what if this real thing that did happen actually succeeded and went a little further. So we kind of played around with history. Some people didn't love that are like hardcore history buffs that were very vocal online, like, no, this is wrong or that's wrong, or like down to the, you mixed, the Wehrmacht with the Luftwaffe on the ground, or the symbols and the insignias or uniforms were mixed. It's like, it was a miracle we even had uniforms. So
I think I should specify that what I mean by history buff is I just like historical movies.
Okay.
And so like I wasn't like dinging points for, oh, this isn't the right uniform, this isn't the right thing. I was like, this is actually like a really cool World War II like action epic, and I accept it as that. So I didn't like degrade points if something didn't make sense to me, because everything that I saw worked. I was like, this is really cool.
Well, then you got it, and you watched it for what it was, which was it was much more Indiana Jones than Saving Private Ryan, and we definitely wanted to make, a big, fun, sometimes still very powerful and poignant, with the Nazis being the bad guys, and unfortunately everything that's happening in the world today. And when it came out, even, before all the anti-Semitism that's gotten rampant lately, which is, I won't even get into that because I'm very passionate about that topic as a Jewish man. But, even when we shot the movie in 2018 and 2019, right before the pandemic, there was already some growing, anti-Semitism in Europe and here more than there has been, in recent decades.
There was tension.
So there was, and I leaned into how I feel politically. If you watch the movie, we kill a lot of Nazis. So
there was no shortage of Nazis getting absolutely just bodied.
104 is the body count of the Nazis. I counted as I was doing the edit.
That's actually really cool.
With our awesome editor, Shanina Maria, I'm not forgetting to plug everybody.
Shout out, yeah.
But I'll tell you about the planes because that's where you wanted to start.
It blew my mind. Michael, I don't think you understand. I love, specifically not just aviation, I love military aviation. And so when the movie kicked off, I was like, oh, this is right up my alley. I looked over to Jay and I was like, bro, how? And Jay immediately was like, this is CGI. And I'm like, dude, there's no way. Look how good they looked insane. I mean, there's like, throughout the film, there's like 2 or 3 shots where I'm like, I can see how that would be because of the explosions and all that. I doubt you could blow period accurate planes up in the sky. But I was so blown away by just how they look. Like anyone who's watching this podcast or listening right now, please, it's on Amazon. You can go check out. It's also on Tubi for free with ads. Like the film is so like detailed, and the plane sequences are just, they're so gorgeous. Like it's almost hard to put in. If I'm allowed to put images over this, I would love to put some screen grabs, or just people can see what the planes look like. But yeah, it blew my mind, and I just want you to walk us through how that ended up in frame.
Sure. Well, this is not a plug to buy the movie, but this is to, if you want to see the detailed process and the real behind the scenes. For some reason, Amazon doesn't have the special features, but the Apple TV and the DVD and Blu-ray physical versions, there's a 30-minute behind the scenes that shows mostly from crew members' iPhones that were documenting it, you know, because it was a lower budget movie. We couldn't afford like a full behind the scenes crew to document everything like a proper, you know, studio film has. So it's literally like from the crew members' points of view, you get to see how we made the movie. Especially the aerials. And when you said about the destruction shots, every one of those is actually a scale model plane, like they did with Top Gun, Battle of Britain, The Right Stuff. I would say Iron Eagle, but that was the example I gave to my special effects guy. If it looks like Iron Eagle, it's not in the movie, and we're doing something wrong. So please make it look like Top Gun. And that was Matthew Stratton, our special effects supervisor, our armorer, and not visual effects. That's a guy named Ryan Urban that did everything digitally. I'll get to him later. But Matt was responsible for all the blanks, all the bullet hits and squibs, the smoke, you know, in the air, and the models, him and a guy named Carlton Nienhaus, who was his assistant. They built them from like hobby kits, and some I think from scratch, and we hung them in the air against, you know, blue sky, just like Top Gun.
Told you, bro.
And well, here's the thing.
I told you that's how you guys did it.
We did it, but we did have to have it enhanced severely because like you could kind of still see. It's like no offense, Matt, you did a fantastic job. You could tell it was a scale model, and so then Ryan Urban and his team at Turncoat Pictures, along with Crafty Apes, Incessant Rain, Anna Brain. I feel like there's one more I'm forgetting, but there were 5 visual effects companies that came together doing everything from rotoscoping, you know, wires and cables out to adding in more gasoline explosions that were comped in, and making the paint jobs look right, you know, actually taking the real paint jobs from the real planes, scanning them, and then like pasting them on the models. I still don't even know how they did it that well, but it's a blend. It's to make it that organic, and I'm glad that it kind of fooled you that it was all, you know, in camera. It is a mixture of really high end visual effects and really nice, you know, old fashioned handmade craftsmanship, and that's really how the whole movie was kind of done. It was a kind of a hybrid of state of the art high tech and very low tech old fashioned. Just go out, get a camera, put something in front of it, and do it, you know. And I think a lot of people have said to me, including, I won't name them, but like there's a couple of Hollywood directors, like legendary guys, that I still idolize and look up to. And I'm like, how are you even talking to me? That said, like, how the hell did you do the aerial sequences? Like, just like you're saying.
It cannot be understated. It's really impressive.
Well, here's exactly what happened. And this kind of ties into also the journey to get to the movie. So I was directing commercials professionally since 2006. And in 2013, I was living in Chicago for about 11 and a half years. I went to Columbia College, Chicago from 2002 to 2006. And met most of my key crew members there to this day, which, again, I'd like to eventually come back and talk about just how important that collaboration is. But I was doing a commercial for the Yankee Air Museum in Ypsilanti, Michigan, based at Willow Run Airport. And my dad's a pilot. He's an attorney specializing in aviation. It's all starting
to come together now.
Yeah, I grew up at airports. I grew up around airplanes, military and private and commercial. And so, you know, I was aware of the Yankee Air Museum. I had done some filming with them for some prior projects that we tried to get off the ground, no pun intended. But that, this was movie number 3. Wolf Hound was the 3rd feature we tried to get made, and it was the 3rd time's the charm. The first 2 did not work. And I can go into that if you want, but what ended up happening was when we were filming for the Yankee Air Museum in 2013, I was really hungry to try to get a movie together. I thought, okay, I got to do the Robert Rodriguez style. Like, what do I have access to that will look really big and that has big production value, be big set pieces, but that I actually have a connection to, that's not, something you just dream up and hope to God you can find, but something that you actually can, like, you can call a buddy and say, hey, can I come use this and film here? And so the commercial was for their B-17 Flying Fortress experience flights. And they take up, 12 or so people at a time and fly them around for 45 minutes. And you get to actually feel what it was like, to be flying in a World War II aircraft.
That's so cool.
I'm a huge World War II, not fan is a weird word, but just like enthusiast, I guess.
That's the right way. That's what I say, yeah.
Yeah. And so I've always, like, just growing up, my dad always instilled in me, like, the coolest fighter plane is the P-51 Mustang. All stop. There is nothing better than that, and that's what the 2, main heroes fly at the beginning. So when we're shooting that commercial, we had to do it all in one day. It was pretty low budget, but, we had a couple movie cameras. My friends from Chicago came in, and, we were both on the ground and flying in the B-17. And I thought, okay, wait a minute. I think there's a movie here. Like, this is too cool to not try to make a movie with these resources, build a story around, airmen in combat or fighter pilots, and so I literally, from about 2013 until 2018, I mean, we wrote the script in 2014 and revised it, for the next few years as we were looking for financing. But along the way, this might sound like very simplified, but I literally got the planes by calling up the Air Museum here and the Air Museum down in Virginia Beach, the Military Aviation Museum. And I literally said, can I use your planes, please? I just asked.
You just called, like, the front desk?
Well, not the front desk. There was, like, I knew who to call there, like the coordinators, or the directors of the museums and the chief pilots. And that was through the, again, just like building the dots and the connections from one client to the next, or filmmakers or actors to the next. The Yankee Air Museum put me in touch with the Military Aviation Museum. And so it was a combination of aircraft from both museums that made up what you see in the film. And, it was actually, like, skin of our teeth, we got that yes, because that's a big to-do to ask. Because, like, just like, a race car or something, or a really high-end sports car, every time you take it out, you have to do maintenance on it. It's like the planes are truly from the 1930s and 40s. So you have to have a team of mechanics, fix them pretty much every time they come back and land. And so we actually had more mechanics, I think, than pilots on the movie, because we were really pushing the envelope, pulling G's, having them really do dogfight maneuvers, and going more aggressive than they do at air shows.
So quick question then. Do you know percentage-wise, if you could give me a ratio, what is the ratio of real air photography to model photography?
The only model shots were the explosion shots, or the extreme close-ups of, like, chunks of metal or chunks of wood being shot out of the hulls. That we actually had a fake wing that the production designer, Brandon Ottenbacher, who you've had on this show, I believe he was your first guest. So him and his team made a fake wing that we did a lot of close-ups of, and we actually, used different parts of it for the good guys and the bad guys, whether it was the shiny aluminum hull or the more greenish, painted camouflage. But outside of those shots, every single flying shot, every aerial shot, whether it's air to air or ground to air, that's the real thing. Top Gun style is the best way to put it. So you're not the first person to think it was CG. There was actually a lot of people have debated it. Our sound designer, Peter Bauvietz, He had just done Midway for Roland Emmerich in 2019. And that was his biggest profile job to date. And an absolute legend named Stephen Hunter Flick, who literally has done stuff for the Star Trek movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark, RoboCop, Starship Troopers. He won the Oscar for Speed. I met, over the course of trying to get movie number 2 made, which did not happen. And he put me in touch with Peter. And so Peter and his team had just done Midway, and that was all CG. There wasn't a single real plane in that film. And he was amazed, that we had real aircraft, and like Midway was like $125 million budget. Ours was not.
What was the budget of your film?
It was, I am technically asked not to reveal the exact budget.
Okay.
I don't know if you're going to have to edit this out or not. It was less than 5. But
congratulations, Michael.
Thank you. It was a bit of a to-do. It was.
I mean, what you guys did with that is just momentous.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. And I'm still thankful it happened. Like it's, I don't take any of it for granted. I still pinch myself pretty much every day that happened. But to wrap up the CG thing, one of his Foley artists, Peter's Foley artist, who I can't remember the name, he called Peter and he was like, "Wow, their CG is better than Midway. How did they do this? This is way better." And Peter was like, "It's not CG."
Must be quite a compliment, right?
I had a good day from that. But it was all real. And I would be totally irresponsible to not mention the guy that really made it possible and safe. Well, the pilots themselves were all excellent. The lead fighter pilot was, oh no, I'm blanking now. You're going to please edit this part out. Crap.
It's okay.
Oh my God.
Tell you what, when you give me their name, I'll just put their photo right here. We'll put their photo and their name right here.
Okay.
Jay, you got a shot of me right now, right? Yeah, they'll be right there.
The sad thing is, I think his name is Michael, like mine, and I can't remember the last name. But okay, edit from this point in. So Craig Hosking was our aerial coordinator and lead camera pilot, and he had done all of Christopher Nolan's movies. Like he did all the Batman movies. He flew for pretty much everything since he did Tenet, Oppenheimer. I wasn't allowed to tell people what he was doing when he was doing those things.
Seems fair.
And then he's worked for Michael Bay many times, both commercials and like Pearl Harbor, and just he's one of the leading aerial coordinators, second unit directors, and photographers in Hollywood. He mostly flies helicopter, but for this it was a fixed wing Aerostar kind of aerobatic plane. And the aerial DP, Dwayne McClintock, who I've known since about 2009 when we were trying to make movie number 1, and we finally got to do it. Those two guys did all the photography and all of the insane camera moves and the visuals up in the air, plane to plane. And they used a shot over camera system, which is similar to what Space Cam used to be. Like it's the ball camera that hangs down and can go 360 degrees. And it would be, about an hour to an hour and a half flight at a time. And then everyone had to come down. The planes had to get fixed. The men had to rest. Everybody had to have like a break. So it's kind of like you're on for an hour, you're off for an hour and a half or 2 hours. You're on for an hour and a half, you're off for 3 hours. Or else you exhaust people and you risk safety. And safety was our number one priority. I'm not just saying this to sound good, but from Craig coordinating everything in the air, which actually meant like every single hop, every flight, he had the pilots, walking around the hangar like this, as their airplanes like blocking out, like, okay, you go here. When you bank this way, you do this. When you dive this way, you do that. So everything was walked through, just like a stunt coordinator would coordinate an action sequence on the ground. So it was extremely planned and very rehearsed, and everyone knew what the other person was doing. Otherwise, I mean, there's no way it would have been safe. And, you know, again, everything on the ground that Matt Stratton did, that our stunt coordinator, Ely Barta, who's done most of the big films, you know, here in Michigan and a bunch in LA, and he was one of the stunt drivers on Ferrari recently. He's done the Transformers films. He almost, like, I think got killed on one of them because he got like broken ribs or something, and was in the hospital, I believe, for a little bit. But then he came back to work. That's how badass he is and his work ethic. But the whole film, with all the action we did in the air and on the ground, the most we had were a couple of people had bruises on their hands or like a cut on their thumb, and that's it. And
Wow.
I'm still
It's
to this
crazy
day thankful.
because you have some shots where people are like jumping out of cars as they're exploding and stuff like that. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
I'm like, there's one jump. There's one jump. I think it's like, I don't want to give any spoilers. There's a sequence where a car explodes and a guy gets thrown out of the vehicle. And even Jay said when he saw this guy like flip through the air like 4 times, he's like, man, look at that form. Like, there's this like 4 somersaults in the air. And I guess I need to know now, as a director who did a film that has, you know, such extravagant action sequences, like, how do you coordinate? Like, how do you yourself, when you write the screenplay, is it written into the screenplay? Is it something you just figure out with your coordinators? Like, does it say like 2 sentences and then they fight and then you move on? Or do you like detail it in the screenplay? Like, I'm very curious to know what that process is like to conceptualize the action and then to film the action.
Well, that's a very good question because it kind of varies based on the sequence and also based on, for lack of a better description, at what point in the process, how much do I know what I'm doing at that point versus having an idea, but it's not totally, you know, a shot to shot formed sequence yet. Like there were some things when Tim Ritchie, who wrote the script, he's been my writing partner since like 2003. You know, from the moment that he wrote something, I could visualize like, okay, this is exactly how I'm going to shoot it. These are the focal lengths I'm going to use. Like I'm a very visual director. Thankfully, I taught myself at film school. I learned, and outside of film school, I was kind of a self-teaching student. A lot about cameras, a lot about lenses, a lot about, you know, what will this give you on the screen versus this, so that you're not just relying on a director of photography or a stunt coordinator, because and sometimes you do. I mean, there were times on Wolf Hound and many other shoots where I've said, okay, you choreograph this, make it awesome and safe. Here's what I want. And, you know, what's the best place to put the camera? You know, what's the best place to put the stuntman? Most of the time, you know, I've got that in my head. But if I don't know it, I totally defer to the people that know better. And I'm also not saying anything against directors that are not as visual and pay more attention to the acting and the storytelling through the acting or through the dialogue, and letting a DP shoot the movie more, you know, taking care of the visuals. I just happen to come from that, you know, the school of, you know, Ridley and Tony Scott, James Cameron, John Woo, Michael Bay, Sam Raimi, Russell Mulcahy, John McTiernan, like guys that are so visual that if you push the mute button, you know, you can totally know everything that's going on because the camera is telling the story just as much as the script or the actors. But again, you know, to stay on the point, there were certain sequences that we did little stick figure storyboards for. I can't draw worth a damn. So my storyboards look like little stick figure, you know, Saturday morning or Sunday morning cartoons. There were some that we did as many little tiny like micro machine sized planes and shooting it with our iPhones to storyboard the aerial sequences. And you can see that on the documentary. Cool. Oh, it was hilarious because it was like me, the DP, Wes Gathright, who's been one of my main DPs, my main DP actually since 2006. And I met him in 2004 at film school. It was me, him, and Shanina Maria, our editor, holding the planes. It's like, okay, go this way, go that way. And then the camera goes like that. And I would send those to Craig, our aerial coordinator. And he would either say, that'll kill someone, we're not going to do that. Or, yes, we can do that. Or, here's how we can adjust it. And the same thing with Ely Bard, our stunt coordinator. He would say, that cameraman can't be there. That stuntman has to be over there. Mike, if you want this punch to sell, or if you want this explosion to sell, like you mentioned, the guys flying through the air, those were hydraulic, ratchet pulls from like a crane that, he would control it, and Ely would go 3, 2, 1, action. And then the guy would get flung, like in a Michael Bay movie, like Transformers or something. And sometimes we would wind the cord like around the guy, and that's when he would spin. So it was very cool. I learned a lot in terms of just how you do that and how you accomplish, like when you see someone flying off their feet like a gyroscope from an explosion. And then sometimes it was just as low tech as like there's a little rope around someone and another stunt guy goes, and he pulls them. But the other thing that helps with the action planning is I love movies, and I grew up loving movies. The first movies I remember ever seeing were on my parents' VHS player, the original Star Wars and Top Gun. Go figure. And just because of how many action movies I've watched, I kind of have like a catalog in my head of like, oh, this can be like this moment in this movie, except we're going to do it a little different, or, ooh, this lighting would really help sell this, But, sometimes it does say giant action sequence and then we move on. Sometimes it's literally so specific where it's like he punches the guy in the stomach and then he does an uppercut and then he grabs the knife. And sometimes I've even had to say like, please don't take some of this out. This is too expensive, or this is too detailed. We can't do this. Like in the prisoner pen scene when the two Nazis come in to try and kidnap the French resistance fighter, played by Cara Joy Reid, who was also both a local casting director as well as a co-producer on the movie. And she had worked with me for many, many years. And we're kind of family friends through our dads. Again, from the world of aviation, she is. We had some choreography that Tim wrote where it was like, we can't do this. It's like, this is either going to hurt somebody or it's going to take 2 days to film and we have 45 minutes. So I literally said like, Ely, what can we do? Make this safe. How do we get this story point across? And that's like, a lesson I've learned over the years. And I'll admit I was pretty hard-headed in college. It was like, no, I have to come up with all the shots, all the action, all the everything. I'm going to operate the camera most of the time. I'm going to do this and that. I really learned the value, like getting into the real world, especially, of collaboration very quickly. And if there's somebody in the room that knows how to do something better, lean on them, let them help. Like say, okay, I know what I want, but you know how to do it better, or you know how to do it safely, or I think maybe I know what I want, but you might have a better idea. And just like some huge directors have said in interviews in recent years, sometimes a great idea comes from a production assistant, and you should not dismiss that no matter who it is. Like I try to treat everybody as equally as possible, because the best creativity can come from anybody at any moment if they have passion, if they're really into it. If it's an environment, that's oppressive and they don't feel very into it, there's not going to be many ideas. And so, for some of the action, again, it was very planned. Some of it was improv based on like, oh, I didn't know that prop was going to be there until this morning. Or, oh crap, this didn't work. The motorcycle died. Now we got to cut that scene. Now we got to, take care of these guys in a truck or on foot. There was going to be this big motorcycle, moment with two Nazis, that get taken out and like get flung off their bikes and the bikes go skidding. And the morning of, the reenactors' motorcycles would not start.
Wow.
So we had to kind of do a quick rewrite. And
the stress.
and then guess what happened at lunch?
What?
They started.
No.
They started. And I was like, oh my God, we can't use them now because we've already shot this. So like, sorry.
Yeah,
you know.
I think just a note to anyone listening, people who have made films know this. People who want to make movies should get to know this. And that is, you got to listen to the film. The movie knows what it wants to be. And so when you're making a film and things don't go the way you initially planned, you've got to find the opportunity and the obstacle. You know, you've got to use the difficulty. Otherwise, the film's talking to you, essentially. That in that case, I choose to believe that's the film's way of saying to you, this isn't going to help us. Like, this is cool. It's a cool idea, but this isn't like what I need, like, for this movie to work. And then you find something that ends up ultimately being better or more effective for the story. In my situations, it's been a lot of that.
I've experienced that many times. And by the way, I really want to make sure, am I going too fast and talking about too many random tangenting things? Because I can talk a lot, but I want this to be helpful and
personally,
and make sense.
I think for what you need to understand is there's a lot of people who might listen to this who just want to know what it was like to be in your head on set. They want to know like what that circus was. And so when you go and talk and describe these situations in as much detail and depth, it provides a lot of, in my opinion, like demystifying. Because it's like, most people, myself included, if we saw this film and just don't know anything about you, like it just feels like, how does anyone ever make like something this cool? Like you know, the planes alone, you just look at you like, wow, this is insane. This must be like a $200 million big budget film. Like there's a lot of that, like, I guess, the way I describe it is barriers or like gatekeeping, where it's like, how does one even get to know that process? And then you're kind enough, you're generous enough to share your time and talk to us. And then we just get to break down your process. And then it really becomes as simple as a creative who collaborates with other creatives, and then they try their best to make the best output they possibly can. And that's a beautiful process. And that makes it a bit more obtainable. It takes away the mystique, but it still allows it to be, you know, I guess in its own way, cool.
That's a much more concise way of saying it than myself. I talk a lot, but no, absolutely. And, you know, to kind of back up a little bit, you know, this was my first movie, you know, movie. I'd done a bunch of shorts, a bunch of commercials, a bunch of music videos.
Yeah. And I wanted you to tell us why a World War II epic as well.
Well, it was partially because, one, I wanted to try to make, I'll be honest, I wanted to make a bigger splash, you know, something that was more notable than your, let's say, your typical, you know, and not demeaning anything, but just like an independent film that's a lot of talking, like talking heads, you know, basically. And some of the best movies in history have been that. Yeah, I mean, I was actually thinking
the mumblecore genre is pretty good.
Well, even like the classic, like 12 Angry Men, you know, I literally was thinking about that for some reason this morning and just thinking, man, that'd be nice, you know, to just to do something so contained and simple, yet very complex from a dramatic and acting and character standpoint. And you don't have to, you know, do the kind of epic production that we did.
Yeah, you don't have to rig explosives or anything.
Well, you could still find a way to do it, I think. But
that's the spirit.
The truth is, I not only wanted to do something big, but also, you know, my favorite movies are action movies that are either action comedies or action dramas that really do feel, you know, powerful in some way and have real emotion. And, you know, World War II, literally, we were facing, the world was fighting the greatest evil ever known to man, which is still, I believe, the greatest evil known to man today, unfortunately. And it's not being fought on a worldwide military scale, but it is still being fought. And, you know, I don't even want to go into the current events right now because I'll get off on a very impassioned rant and you'll have to bleep me. But, you know, it seemed like it was a good topic. I was very knowledgeable from video games, from my love of classic war movies. My parents raised me on stuff like, you know, The Great Escape, Battle of Britain, Where Eagles Dare, The Longest Day. God, so many other movies. And I felt like I can do this. I felt like this is a good starting place. And I'd rather do something that even if you shoot for the stars, you'll land on the moon, or if the other way you shoot for the moon, if you miss, you'll land in the stars. Even if I screwed it up, it would hopefully be notable enough because of the content, what's on the screen. And it was definitely not the easiest thing in the world to get together. I mean, it was crazy. It was, a miracle that it actually worked. And we were dealing with, some very large scale locations, large scale action, a lot of people. I mean, but again, because of the type of budget, some days we had about 100 people plus on the set.
Wow.
Some days it was, not including me, 3. I mean, literally 3 people sometimes getting little inserts.
Take note, guys, people at home who think like feature films are unattainable. You can go in the same production from 100 crew members to 3 and still make a killer movie.
You really can. You really can. And I can't not mention my producing partner, Sue Witham. And she's a legendary local producer of commercials. And her family, they have a company, Rare Medium Well Done, which I'm not kidding, took me about 2 years to get. I didn't get the joke. I was like, that's a funny name. I wonder why. That's it. Okay. So I felt like an idiot, but so her cleverly named company, she's been a rock star. Like, everyone knows her. Everyone's worked with her. If you haven't worked with her, you should, and you probably will. And her husband, Steve Witham, is also a local director and DP. She worked with me on a commercial way back in 2011, and that led to her producing this movie with me. And I think I know we had talked before, in the pre-interview about how I got to this point. I think this would be a good moment maybe to just touch on that for a minute.
Please.
So I grew up in West Bloomfield, went to Andover High School, which is now the Bloomfield Hills High School. They tore it down and rebuilt it. I'm not sure why, but they did. So someone made money. But anyway, might want to edit that out. I went to school in Chicago, Columbia College, for film directing. And I met my DP, my composer, my writing partners, some of my producing partners, actors that have been with me for 20 years. It's like they really tell you network at film school, and they weren't kidding, because the people that didn't do that didn't come out with a team, and I came out with a team. So if I said, hey, let's go do a spec commercial on the weekend, or, oh crap, I got a real job, but it's not a lot of money. I could rely on my team that I had become friends with and had worked with on countless sets, whether they were student films for class or extracurricular films. I shot all over Chicago, and it was all just like, a 16 millimeter Bolex, hand crank camera. I miss film so much, by the way. Film is still better than digital. And like, we were running around trespassing on rooftops and so many alleyways, Millennium Park on the L.
Nothing like some guerrilla filmmaking, right?
Oh, I mean, we should have been arrested like 20 times. And I'm not trying to say that in like a cool way. Like, we really should have been arrested. There was actually one time we were filming on the subway, and a cop was over my shoulder, and my friends were all like, stop. It's like, Mike, I think you should stop. Like, no, I'm getting the shot. And the cop's like critiquing the shot over my shoulder, supposedly like, not bad, get out of here, So after all of that, I worked in commercials and music videos, but working my way up from the very bottom, like first doing specs to get work, then finally getting a couple of clients. My first actual like real job was for the Air Force, and that was through an aviation artist, a hand-drawn painter and artist, Rick Herder, who's one of the best in the country. He became a friend, through aviation, and he recommended me to a colonel. at Battle Creek at the 110th Fighter Wing that unfortunately no longer exists. And my first commercial out of college was shooting A-10 Thunderbolts, doing live fire exercises.
That's so sick.
It was cool. It was really cool. And it was two 35 millimeter movie cameras, giant zoom lenses. And I felt like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing in the world. And the guys with me were a few people I made friends with in college that were willing to come out and do it for pennies on the dollar because it was so cheap. But, I think 2 out of the 3 of those guys worked on Wolf Hound, including Wes, my DP. Excuse me. And over the years, I started doing commercials at Stage 3 in Warren, which GM bought it. It used to be a photo studio owned by Andre LaRoche, and Art Bonus was the stage manager. He's a legend around here. He used to be a paratrooper, and then he got into filmmaking. So I think he went, I don't know if he went from a less stressful or more stressful, because some filmmaking can be pretty stressful, but he was okay jumping out of planes, in foreign countries. But I was there from 2013 until 2019 as an in-house director, really scrapping to get, whatever we could. And also doing music videos on the side. I was very lucky to do one for Apple to App of the Black Eyed Peas. And that was in Los Angeles in a whirlwind week where it's like I remember half of it because it was so crazy. But again, it was like every step, every little project or medium project or big project, it was always like who out of the crew is blending and meshing well and vibing well, and maybe some people aren't. And then it's like figuring out as you go, who is your core team that you can depend on to back you up and to make sure that if you're having a bad day or not a great day, or you have a brain fart, or it's like, as David Fincher is famously quoted for saying, he says, you don't know what filmmaking is until the sun is setting. You've got 5 shots to get, but you can only get 2. Yeah. And like, I've been there where it's like, crap, I've got 1. Get a zoom lens on. We'll do it 2 in 1. A slow
you get
push
creative,
in,
yeah. When the sun's going down, you get creative real quick.
You have to. And the thing that has saved my ass over the years has always been my close collaborators that I either met in college or met around Metro Detroit as we worked our way up to Wolf Hound. And the movie wouldn't have happened without them. And everything that's happened since wouldn't have happened. The opportunities that have started to open up, I'm trying to include, as many people as I can. I've run into politics and studio executives and politics with, who can come, who can't, or who has to be more experienced, who can be from the film or from my past crews or whatever. I mean, that's a whole nother topic.
So look, I want to go into another question.
Perfect.
But you were talking about, your collaboration process and the importance of collaborators. I suppose what I really, really would love to know is you run into a lot of obstacles making a movie. And I would like you to maybe walk us through some of the major obstacles you ran into trying to make a feature film. And that could be pre-production or production. I would love to know some of those.
Well, I'll tell you, the very first one is financing. You can't make a movie if you don't have the money to do it. And I hate that. Like, I wish there I wish there was like a branch office. Yeah. I wish Hollywood had a branch office in every city and you could just go to the studios, pitch your projects, get a check and go make your movie. But it far from works like that anymore. And I've actually talked to and heard some much larger filmmakers lamenting recently how hard it is to get, a film made. Even when they've made billions of dollars, it's hard for them to get a film made these days with the current state of things, just in the industry. But the financing we worked on for about 5 years, from conception of idea to being able to actually do real pre-production and film it. And that was asking a ton of people. And then finally getting, like, you've heard the phrase, I'm guessing, it takes 100 no's to get 1 yes and stuff like that. That's very true. And we were lucky enough to have a single investor on the movie that said yes, but it didn't work out the way that, you know, film school kind of tells you. It was like, yes, but I'm only in for half. And then we had to go find the other half. We couldn't find that. But then we finally got an actor, James Maslow, from Big Time Rush, the band and the TV show.
Big fan.
He's awesome too. I couldn't have asked for a better partner, collaborator, leading man for the first movie. He was great. And he was full of ideas. He was full of passion because he really wanted this to work too. Excuse me. And having a leading actor as well as Trevor Donovan, who actually came through a friend of James, having those lead two guys, not to mention the whole rest of the cast, a lot of whom are local Michigan actors or from Chicago or, Nashville, I believe one guy. It's like the fact that they were so passionate made the movie, you know, because you could see it on screen. And that's one of the things I try to create is an environment where you have that passion. Everyone feels like they're contributing. Otherwise, things can get kind of stale. But when James said yes, the movie was like going. But we had a lower budget at the time because our investor had only agreed to half of what we needed. So talk about, you know, a challenge. We had to rebudget, reconfigure everything to half of what it was going to cost and figure out, well, how do we do this? You know, and we had to rearrange some things, cut some things. But by the time the movie was wrapped, the budget actually went up again because he had seen some of the footage. We kind of strategically showed him some footage after the first few weeks, and he said, "This looks really good. Okay, I'm gonna actually keep financing you." And that's
I saw those planes, man. I'm telling you.
It didn't hurt, but that's not the way you want to finance a movie. Is like kind of as you go. But we kind of had to do that initially, and then very quickly he was convinced by the work. But you know, outside of the financing, I would say, you know, finding the right locations. We did not find the right location. That's why the Nazi base in real life is made up of like 5 different airplane locations or hangars in 2 different states. We shot in Ypsilanti. We shot on Grosse Ile. We shot down in Virginia Beach, and multiple hangars in every location, multiple runways. So in the movie, hopefully the edit makes it look like it's one big complex.
I had no idea.
It was 5 different places. So again, that was just a little bit of stress on my part. It's like, I can't show anything past that tree or else we're dead, but I can show this, you know? And then the biggest obstacle by far, I mean, and I think you've probably heard this before. Let me wet my whistle so I don't get too dry here. The biggest obstacle is time. And you know,
man, it really does affect everyone, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, we were trying to keep our days to like 8 to 10 hours tops.
Oh wow, that's incredible.
Well, I don't like abusing people. I don't like tiring people out. I'd rather have a crew that can still stand after a few days and doesn't want to kill me. I think a few people did want to kill me because we were doing some ambitious things with a smaller crew some of the time, but we tried to keep it, you know, to reasonable hours and not do like 12, 13, 16-hour days. There was one day that went to about 14 hours, but that was because we lost the location after that and we were a little behind. So we had to do every last shot there and we wrapped late. And that was the only day, that and one of the days when it was 100 degrees in the woods. Usually it was in the 80s or the 90s, but when it got to 100, tempers got a little heated too. So those 2 days, the running long day in the hangar and the hot morning in the woods, not as good. But the everyone apologized afterwards though. Like as soon as the temperature went back down, everyone was like, "I'm sorry, man. Everything's cool." And it was kind of funny.
Yeah, I suppose that's something we should also, I guess, not justify, but give a little, like, I guess, a bit more clarification. Sometimes film shoots can be tense. Things can be stressful.
Oh God, yeah.
And sometimes people aren't necessarily their best selves. And that's not, again, a justification, but it's like when you look at the pressure, you know, when you're in a corporate office, you're paid to be there for those hours. You're going to be back tomorrow. On a film shoot, like you might not have that location after that day. You might not have that actor after that day. You might not have, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot, like it's a lot of schedules. So
Scheduling and time.
It can go bad really quick is what I'm trying to get to if you're not in the moment, you know, just hyper focusing, and that can put people on the edge.
Well, and I, unfortunately, and I'll admit this, in college, I didn't know that. And I was just like, it's all about the content and the image and what we're getting. And
Cinema.
Yeah, it was like whatever it takes. And, you know, I pissed a few people off that were like, oh my God, that shoot was grueling, you know, and it was. And I was like, after a few shoots my junior and senior year, I was burnt out for like a couple months afterwards. I didn't want to touch a camera. But I love movies too much to do anything else, so I'm still doing it. But I have learned over the years how to rein in, you know, as a director, it's not always great to show that you're stressed. You know, you're the leader you're the captain of the ship, you're the leader of the shoot. And if you're not, you know, leading it with a sure hand, sometimes you have to fake it like you actually know what you're doing as you're kind of making it up as you go. Sometimes you really do. And any director worth their salt will be honest about that. You know, I also had to learn how to treat people always more respectfully, with kindness, with, you know, I joke a lot. I make a lot of jokes on purpose on the set to keep people laughing, or to, you know, maybe surprise them with like, you know, a bit of profanity when they didn't expect it, and just like keep it as light as you can, because it is grueling work. It is very stressful. Equipment is really heavy. It takes a lot of time to light one shot, and every day you're trying to get at least, you know, 15 or 20. You know, some days I think I've gotten 40, and like you want to fall over after that, but then you have to come back the next day and do it again. And, you know, I actually got some really great advice from a mentor of mine, Jonathan Frakes, who played Commander Riker in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Oh, wow. And he directed Star Trek First Contact, which is one of the best Star Trek movies ever made. It's like that and Wrath of Khan, like that's it. And he also directed Insurrection. He directed a bunch of the new Picard, Discovery, Strange New Worlds. Like he's one of the most accomplished like television directors, but also just for First Contact alone, he's one of my favorite movie directors. And through the Yankee Air Museum, they actually had a volunteer there, Bob Catalano, who is also a booking agent at Star Trek conventions and like Comic-Con conventions. So I met Worf and Riker through him, and Jonathan Frakes, I called him the morning of the first day of Wolf Hound, and I was freaking out and I was scared shitless. And he basically talked some sense into me, calmed me down, and said, you know, he gave me some pretty sage advice about how to be a little looser with your shot list, how to be a little more aware of time, but, you know, allow this to be a little improv, allow, you know, your B camera to do this while your A camera is doing this. And he saved my ass because there was a lot of times when if I was tense and I was stressed and I let that overcome me with just looking at my watch, like, oh God, how are we going to get all this done? It would be the same thing every day. You know, by lunch, I'm not cutting shots, but I'm combining them. And it's like, do I really need this? Or should I concentrate on this? You know, and it's just the usage of time and the amount of time that, like, you know, there were some shots where I literally had the whole producing team looking at me like, do you really need this? You got to move on. And I was like, this one, yes, I'm sure we're doing this 20 times if we need to. The movie doesn't work without it. But some other shots, it's like, yep, one take, okay, done, moving on, because this is not as crucial, you know, and kind of learning.
Ooh, that's interesting.
You kind of learn that over time, just instinctively. It's like when you're looking at the monitor through the lens, it's like, that's the movie. That's got to be in the movie. And then some other times it's like, this scene might get cut out, and like we need to do lunch soon. So like let's get through it. Let's get the performances right. Let's get the visuals right. But maybe we don't need the extra 30 minutes of light tweaks, you know, because you're going to go into overtime and you're going to get screwed. And you know, right along these lines, last weekend I just shot a political campaign ad for a dear friend of mine, Aisha Faruqi. Vote for her for Michigan House District 57 Democrat. But anyway, we were shooting in a Coney Island that was kind enough to shut down. And so we had like our own Coney Island, which was, I love Coney Island, so I was excited. The smoke machine broke. And the whole lighting scheme was designed around shafts of light coming in through the Venetian blinds, like a very Tony Scott, late 80s, early 90s look, right? And the DP, Cameron Petramali, who's the second most frequent DP I work with. He's a co-owner of 1104 and Light Modifiers in Chicago. Brilliant cameraman, just like Wes Gathright. We're sitting there. This is literally a week ago, so this is very vivid in my mind. We've got like 20 extras, the whole crew, and we're staring at this little box that has this blinking orange light that says, "I'm not working." And they're reading the manual online. They're trying every outlet. They're kicking it. I mean, they're doing everything. There was like a poof of smoke every 5 minutes. We're like, oh shit, it's not working. And so eventually, after about 20 or 30 minutes goes by, several people are coming up to me saying, "Mike, do you really need the smoke machine? Because you're not going to finish your commercial," you know? And it's like, yes, I need the smoke machine. We're going to wait 5 more minutes. And then 5 more minutes go by. The light's not turning green. And, you know, Wolf Hound was such a 1,000 times bigger production than this. But every production, in my opinion, matters just as much. Like, I give just as much passion shooting a close-up of a coffee cup for a commercial as a big action scene. You know, I love film that much, and I can't help it. And I had to make the decision, you know, realizing as a director and thinking as a producer, I think we're going to have to go without the smoke machine, even though it changed our whole plan. And we rejiggered our lighting plan. We established the look. And, you know, comically, I was like, we just went from early 90s Tony Scott to Enemy of the State Tony Scott about, you know, 8 years later. And it worked. It looked beautiful. The footage came out great. Aisha was thrilled. You know, she's the client. You know, she was thrilled. Sue couldn't get over it. The DP couldn't get over it. We were testing out a new set of Cook anamorphic lenses. They looked beautiful. And that was kind of like, you know, like I'm 39. I'm going to be 40 in September. I
would not believe that.
I feel old saying that. So trust me, I don't even want you to tell me your age again. But the point is, like, I'm still learning every shoot. You know, I have no illusions that I'm like, oh, I'm some big shot. It's like, I learned just as much doing that political campaign ad that I think we worked for 8 hours, and like, it's pretty simple, but it looks great. But like, that smoke machine story kind of encapsulates like many years of learned both firsthand and thirdhand, you know, stories about like, you got to make your days. Like Michael Bay says this on commentaries a lot. Like, no matter what you do, you got to make your days, or you're going to get fired, or you're not going to have a very long career. You have to finish, you know? And that was one of those big choices. It's like, strike the smoke machine. Let's move on, you know, and like figure it out anyway. And like you had said just a few minutes ago, I think it was a happy accident, and something that like the world or the shoot was kind of telling us, like, you don't need smoke. You don't need haze. You don't need that crutch to rely on. It's going to look great, you know? And it did.
Well, see, that takes me to my final question, so we can start to close this off. And that is...
Have I talked too much?
No.
Okay.
I just... what I mean by close off is I want to focus on this, because this is where I think is going to be the most important part of this conversation. And that is advice for young filmmakers, or filmmakers in general, who are now starting this process, starting this journey, and are looking up to you as essentially a role model. and what you achieved with the little resources you had and how momentous that achievement was. I think that's what I would love to close on, is if you were speaking to a hall of filmmakers right now who are just about to take on that first step, they're about to take on their own Wolf Hound and are preparing for it right now, what would you say to them?
Well, the first thing I would say is Godspeed and good luck.
And that's all, folks.
I think, a couple of things. First of all, I would say if you really love it and if you really have the passion, like the undying, fiery passion to be a filmmaker, you can. There's nothing that's stopping you from doing it, no matter your circumstance, your background, where you live, the type of movie you want to make, where technology has gotten today, in addition to just your own personal drive. You really can make it happen if you push hard enough and you don't give up. That's the biggest thing that I noticed going through film school. It was kind of, it was a pyramid in the classes. You started with like 30 of us in one class. And then the next it was 20, and then it was 15, then it was 10, then it was 6. And it was the people that were making that final thesis film were the people that didn't give up. There were a lot of people that gave up because they thought this is too hard. I thought it was going to be a party school. I thought it was going to be so much fun and we were just going to watch movies and shoot fun stuff. It's a lot more than that. It's a lot of things to learn and a lot of very tough shoots that you have to put yourself through to kind of get your skin thickened up so that you can survive a professional shoot, because it is stressful. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but you can make it fun if you have that passion and that want, and you say, I'm going to be one of the people that's still here that didn't decide to go home or didn't switch careers or didn't decide I'm going to go party instead of edit. I'm going to go do this other thing instead of focus on my screenplay or focus on my pre-production for the shoot. I'm obsessive about it, but, that truly is like, I know, James Cameron, who's my probably favorite director of all time. He was quoted so many times over the years, just get a camera and start shooting. You're a filmmaker. It's not that easy. It's obviously not, you can't make T2 and Titanic like that. You have to work up to it. But I think, advice-wise, again, you can't do it by yourself unless you want to make documentaries. You cannot be a one-man band and get to do something like Wolf Hound. Like that came about not just because I was very lucky with the financier saying yes and the planes and all the resources. It was absolutely the team that I had made, not just by, befriending people, but really trusting other people's input and creativity to add to mine. If I hadn't done that, if I hadn't truly learned to this is a team effort, this is a collaborative art form. It's not just you as the director, as the king. It's like, it's really about everybody. If you take one person off the set, it no longer works. It's like, you no longer have the visuals, or you no longer have the good sound, you no longer have the stunts, you no longer have the writer. You really do need to, network and value the relationships and foster them and keep that going so that you actually have a production team that can actually enact the stuff that you think of. Any crazy thing you think of, you can do, with modern technology, with modern digital cinema cameras. If you have a good story, you can figure out how to do it. But the first piece of advice is definitely form a team. It's like the Avengers or Justice League. It's like you can only conquer that and accomplish something like that if somebody's got your back. And in my case, a dozen people or more, had my back, that if it wasn't for them, the movie would not exist. But the other thing I would say is just, again, the perseverance to continue growing and continue making, whether it's a music video with your friends, a spec commercial, a short film that's a narrative, you get better every time. No one is Steven Spielberg the first time that they pick up a camera. You know, I'm way better than I was in college. And in college, I was way better than I was in high school. In high school, I was making movies in my backyard with my friends thinking, I'm the greatest. You know, this looks so cool. And like now, no one will ever see that stuff. But it's like you get better every time you pick up a camera and you shoot. You get better at framing, at directing. It took me a long time to really learn how to direct actors. I used to suck at that. And like now I've gotten some very kind compliments from actors I've worked with saying, wow, you know, we knew you did visual stuff. We didn't think you were actually going to be an actor's director. And it's only because of repeated experience and pushing myself to keep doing shoots no matter what. And, you know, after you've done 20 or 25 shoots or 30 shoots, you're going to be pretty good, you know, you don't have to imitate the style that's in or the fashion that's in. If you want to do something and you have a very specific vision, go for it, you know, but do it with passion. You know, I guess it boils down to treat every shoot as if it's $100 million blockbuster. You know, always think of it like, if I have a chance to make a movie or a commercial or a music video or whatever, why not use all your passion, all your energy, all of your pent up artistic ability and throw it all out every time you do it? You know, put it all on the screen. Don't leave any sweat, you know, not accounted for. Like if you, like, you know, the phrase, like, leave it on the stage. Like if you do that, even if you're doing the most rinky dink, tiniest little corporate video, and you're just like, oh my God, you know, I can't believe this is what I'm doing. Make it the best looking corporate video ever, because the reason I got to do Wolf Hound is not just because we had a cool script and a cool idea. I had to present, you know, 15 years of work in a presentation to the investor and say, this is what I do. This is what I can make it look like. This is what I can do with action. This is what I can do with an actor's eyes and with faces and with creating emotion, you know, in this kind of scene. And had I not been able to show a portfolio of that, he wouldn't have given me a dime. Because you need to come with kind of the proof in the pudding. And that's why, like, you know, some people in film school blew off in-class assignments of like, go make a 2-minute short in Grant Park in Chicago. It's like, I really tried to make it seem like a blockbuster. You know, other people blew it off. And some people, it was in between. And it's really just, it's all about treating filmmaking as important as you can, as passionately as you can, and you will eventually catch people's attention, because not a lot of people do that. It's like the people that do that stick out, and you're like, I want to work with that person. I want to collaborate with them. I can't wait to see what they do next, because they're really going for it, you know? And I would say that kind of passion to keep that alive, even in the face of, people saying no to you, people saying, no, I'm not going to give you this funding. No, I don't like this idea. Nah, I'm busy. I'm not going to help you on this shoot. You have to bring your passion no matter what. And eventually you can make something like what we did. And I really believe that.
You know, Michael, I really appreciate you being here today. And I think there's a lot of wisdom you've shared. And I want you to know that I encourage friends of the show, and I can't wait to talk to you again and see where this journey takes you. I've had a wonderful time with you, and I just really appreciate you giving us this opportunity. Thank you.
No, absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. And I hope that this has been coherent enough for all of you out there to get something out of it.
No, this is great. So yeah, guys, that was Let's Talk Motion Picture. This podcast is brought to you by Motion Picture Institute, a film school located in Troy, Michigan. If you'd like to know more about our extensive 1-year filmmaking program, please check out the website at motionpicture.edu and schedule a tour today.